Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Kerstyn, the liberal moderate, and I have my co-host.
Hi, it's Norah Yaya. It is your liberal lobbyist.
That's right. And today we don't have our typical, not our typical, but our regular co-host, the conservative, the Mr. Conservative. We have another great person. I think you guys remember her from our last episode because we haven't recorded a podcast in over, I don't even know how many, like 3 months or something. It's been
that long.
Time. So we've got Jackie here.
Hi, Jacquelyn Martell here.
Hey, thank you for joining us again. Today's episode 36, so I have to mention, I know a lot of people have been sending me messages saying, when are you guys coming back? When are you guys going to have a conversation? Well, we haven't heard what you have to say about this. I've had a few people DM me and some people even text me about it. So I felt like, this time, we tried earlier, but it's heavy. It's heavy time, so I don't know. I was just telling Jackie that I feel like right now things are kind of, I feel like this week was a little bit of a easier week to, start a conversation, because I just felt like there was just too much happening that I wanted to really just kind of listen and see what's happening in terms of like political, what's happening corporately, and just all these different things. So we're going to have we have a lot to talk about. I first want to talk to you guys about, what you've been doing during this quarantine. How have you guys been, making life work?
I'll let Jackie go first. That's just so much.
Yeah,
Jack.
I didn't know that you guys hadn't recorded for quite some time. So I'm excited to hear your updates too. Mm-hmm. I'm working remotely, which is, I think, a blessing, Okay. I'm grateful for that. I know a lot of people aren't afforded that. So I've been working remotely, doing a lot of stuff around civic engagement, advocacy stuff. The primaries, happened this week. So I was doing a lot of organizing around that. Also census stuff, which is super important. So my work primarily is also thinking of ways we can get people more civically engaged, in a time of crisis. Had an event recently with the borough president of the Bronx and the speaker of the assembly on it, and just working with partners throughout the city, doing volunteer work as well. And then on a personal note, I think I've been running like crazy, trying to avoid.
And she means running. She means like
outside.
Actually running.
Not running for office. No, just running.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, but running a lot, biking a lot, trying to keep myself mentally sane. I do get a little stir crazy being in the house a lot. I'm taking my first trip next week, and I'm a little nervous. I'm nervous about it. I know.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Puerto Rico. Oh, okay. And I'm a bit nervous about it. I must admit. I was supposed to go to Arizona. I had to cancel that because the numbers there are it's insane. Totally. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. Just trying to organize, still get people excited about stuff, because a lot of the processes, with the voting, we saw a lot of shakeups with the primaries, and then census stuff is super, super important. I'm worried about redistricting and funding and getting people to fill it out. New York has a really low response rate, so just fill out your census if you haven't.
I did.
Good. Yeah.
How are you, Nora?
I'm with Jackie. Working from home remotely, thank goodness. I feel like I work harder from home than I did in the office. Right? I've been hearing a lot of that. It's God. You're living at work now. And just trying to keep my sanity. I don't work out at all. I don't do anything physical. I just lay. I was going on walks, and then I got scared again. So I was like, you know what? Never mind. So I'm probably one of the extremist, scary people. So really just trying to stay healthy. And for a long time, my mom was here. So I was super cautious of living with one of our elders and taking care of them. And I think that just stayed with me. But been doing Zoom and IG comedy shows and, trying to keep my mental right. What about you?
I same thing, working from, like working and eating and sleeping, and then working and eating and sleeping. And then I just said, you know, in like the mid-May, I was like, okay, I got to work out, because like soon they're going to have to like get me on the TLC, and I'm going to be like my 500-pound life. And they're going to have to
That's
like,
goals, girl.
So,
that's my goal.
That's goals. So I was like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to be on that show. So let me start at least like going for these like 5-mile walks. I haven't gotten to like the running, like I might jog a little bit, but I'm really just trying to be consistent with walking. So I've been doing that every day for like 4 miles, between 4 and 5 miles a day. And that's been very helpful just for energy. Like, I just feel like my energy is like up, you know. Do you run with your mask, Jackie, or do you?
I do maintain social distance too. When I like distancing when I run, I try to be really cognizant of that. Even though like I run in Central Park and it's crazy, but it is hard to run with a mask. It is. I'm not gonna lie. So you might see me like with the chin guard, like remember when Cuomo?
Yeah, the chin straps out here.
So I'm not gonna lie. I try my best though. I really do, but it is hard to run with the mask on.
Yeah.
I ride my bike a lot, and I gotta say, I do ride my bike. I do something, but it's hard with the mask. It's super hard. It's hard to breathe. So I
don't know how long we're gonna have to do this, but I mean, I'm trying. I mean, doctors and nurses do it, so I'm assuming that, you know, they've found, like, because I have a friend that's a nurse, and she was saying that when she gets out of work, she doesn't want to have to keep her mask on.
Oh man,
like,
that's so
she's
true.
like, so she doesn't wear it. She'd be like, I'm not wearing it. I'd be going in and out of, like, going to the liquor store. Now they have to, so she'll put it on for a second, and then she's just so, it's like, it's overboard. And she was in the hot zone in Westchester, so she saw it really.
She's part of the problem.
Yeah.
No,
not at all. No.
She went to the liquor store after work.
Yes,
right.
She's so
you over here working with COVID patients and not wearing a mask. You the main one supposed to have on a mask, ma'am.
I don't want to tell you what she told me about, like, some of these like death certificates. She says there's some shadiness happening, like. If you were, there's a lot of markups for, you know, I think, you know, everybody kind of had the COVID sticker on. It was just weird that she started to notice that, like, it didn't matter what was, you know, what this person died of cardiac arrest, COVID.
Yeah,
you know?
I was reading a report on that's how the numbers are spiking up. A lot of people are saying that this is why I think some of the discord has happened too around this, is because the way that they like are qualifying like death, the type of death, and just attributing it to COVID, even though it might not even be related.
Right.
That's interesting.
It's like we don't even know what to trust anymore. But anyway, let's get into some politics. Yeah, let's get into some politics. So first topic I had, so like I noticed, you know, 2014 Black Lives Matter was like the worst. You said that it's like saying your mother's a bitch. Like, that's what it was. That's what it felt like. It was like horrible to say Black Lives Matter for specifically for white people. That's who really were offended by it. But I see the shift, you know, and I think that it's important to kind of just talk about. I want to know what you guys think the shift has been like. And we do know we can attribute it to Ahmaud Arbery's passing, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Rayshard Brooks having the public response. But I really want to know how you think as a whole, how has Black Lives Matter movement affected society? And then there's just so much. I mean, I think I'd like to hear your breakdown or however you guys feel about it.
It's a lot to unpack. You know, I think I would say that to me, it shows the power of the people and being able to organize. I think it was, I don't want to say a joke in 2014, but people looked at it as like this radical thing. And, you know, these women stayed true who founded it and kept pushing through. And, you know, I think now it's become a real political movement in addition to, you know, a Black Lives, Black power movement, because that is essentially what it is. And I think that frightens people still today. But I think people recognize that if you don't get on board with this, there are consequences. So everyone's kind of also recognizing their own issues and not wanting to be caught out there, right? And so also getting behind it. I wonder how much of this is trendy and how much of this is really going to maintain a real presence that's going to impact policy decisions and politics for years to come. So I think that's my only concern. But right now, I'm just so proud of the way that it's evolved over time, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, they raise money. They raise a lot of money. So
they raise a lot, and I'm like, where does it go?
Well, we didn't get into the money yet.
Yeah.
What do you mean? We can talk about that. I mean,
because you're saying, I just want to kind of just, I'm going to check and let you talk, but I just wanted to, the fact that you're saying you want to see what it's going to do. I mean, once you raise money, now you have.
Well, they're not a 501c3. So that was interesting for me to hear, and that they're under another organization, and I forget the name right now. But this umbrella organization that they're under is a 501c3.
That's not good.
And it's all about racial justice. But then to me, that was also a little tricky, right? And it just, I don't know necessarily if it means the money is funny. I just think that there needs to be more transparency with how this money is being spent, where it's going, where our dollars going. Yeah. For all of the organizations under the Black Lives Matter kind of umbrella that we've been funneling money to, what's happening, right? So I would like to know, but I don't think we're there yet, quite honestly. I don't think they're ready for that conversation.
Yeah, that's next. You know that, because in a couple months
that'll come up.
They're going to be saying this money went, and we already know how that works. So I'm hoping that I just hope that they get the right people in place. Like we need running a nonprofit. There's certain structure that you have to follow. So I hope that they get that foundation, that support, because, you're getting this money. People believe in you. It's time to, make a difference. But Jackie, what were you thinking? I'd love to hear.
They're getting a lot of money. I've seen corporations making massive donations. So yeah, I think that I haven't heard anything about misuse of funds or anything like that, but I do think to your point, Kerstyn, I hope that they get some advisors on how to actually allocate that money, and I want to see what it goes to help the Black community specifically. To your earlier question, what the difference is, I think now is just, I think people just said enough is enough. In 2014, and I remember I went to Ferguson, and I protested. I was a part, I was into it. So I think that it, depending on who you ask, the question is gonna be different. Black Lives Matter was always a movement for me and the people that were in my circles, right? And then when I started to move in my career, especially working in education, I didn't realize how politicized something so simple, you would think ideologically, Black Lives Matter, we really arguing this in 2020, right? But then I realized. No, I really realized just how political. I remember being in Memphis. I was living in Memphis. Went to St. Louis, and I was just oh, this is a thing. This did and that also is attributed to where I think you live as well. I think in New York there's somewhat of a bubble here. That's a whole other combo. But I think people just said enough is enough. Watching a man be murdered on camera and having a white officer put his knee in his neck for over 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and watching George Floyd scream out for his deceased mother. I mean, I think it pulled at the heartstrings of so many people. There's just no way to hide this. There's no excuses that can be made. And then I think coupled with a lot of other things too, I just think in this COVID world that we're living in, people don't have sports. People don't have distractions. People are going stir crazy. They're unemployed. And I think it's right in front of your face, and there's just no distraction. And, it's kind of I'm happy that people are riled up, and I'm seeing I met with someone yesterday. There was a protest here in Harlem, and they said they protest every day. They start at Washington Square Park. Well, they start at different places, but mainly Washington Square Park. And they march every day. I hope to plan one march with my church and a lot of other faith-based organizations in New York, including Hillsong, The Gathering, Harlem, and some elected officials. It was really nice. And it's a shift though in this movement. It's just so many people coming together. And I think it's spurred a lot by younger people that are just this is crazy, So I think that's the difference. I do worry, to Nora's point though, that it's like trendy. I see a lot of people, I'm not gonna lie, that I know that ain't about that life. Like they, they'll post it on their social media. And I will tell you, these are like, I don't want to say like these are associates.
Are these black people? These are black people?
They're not. They're not necessarily. No, they're not. They're non-black people.
I mean, I've seen it from both, but
I've seen it from both.
Oh, you've seen it from both? Okay.
And I'm just like, yeah. I'm like, what is this? It's like, it's cool now to post it or to post like memes and stuff like but I've seen people become very activated in real ways, and I'm just assuming positive intent from these people, because that's all I can do. I have no control over it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I do worry that it's becoming so like commonplace, like the term itself, that is just like a trend and a hashtag. And I'm hoping that people continue though, because yesterday there was a huge rally at City Hall. They said like thousands of people came out, and so I don't think these protests will stop.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't even see the news. I didn't see that on anything.
Yeah, it was Occupy City Hall, and it was a friend of mine who works actually. I want to say he's not in NYPD. He might be in NYPD. I'm not sure, but he sent me a whole bunch of pictures. But it was on social media. But thousands of people saying that they're calling to defund NYPD. So they were at City Hall, and I think that they're going to be there every day.
So I just want to respond to some of what Jackie is saying, if I may, just because. So, okay, I agree. Well, first, let me back up. BLM, the organization, I found the name. It's called Thousand Currents. So that is the 501c3 that they are under. And they're a left of center grant making organization that provides financial assistance to left-leaning projects, organizations, and activists. So I guess maybe prior to 2020, Black Lives Matter probably didn't have the financial support that they needed, and used Thousand Currents, I guess, as their umbrella 501c3, and they're kind of looking to them as their conduit. So that's something we can look into further, and something we should definitely be holding.
We should look into that organization and see what they do with
holding
funds.
Folks accountable, for sure.
Yeah.
And then to Jackie's point, like, I'm with you. I was out there in 2014. I remember marching to the Staten Island Ferry for Eric Garner. I just remember shutting down the highways and the streets, and like, there were positive, there were negative responses. It was crazy. I remember sleeping in Zuccotti Park back in 2013, I think, for the Occupy Wall Street movement, when we were fighting against the 1%ers. And so this has been a movement that's going on. I think something I struggled with was like seeing all these new faces kind of jump in, not even young, but like my peers who have been absent for a long time. And now they've been activated. And so I'm leaning towards believing, positivity, and that they've just been activated through this horrific murder. But at the same time, I'm side-eyeing the trendiness of it all, right? And then I think the death of George Floyd, something me and my dad were talking about, was just like, why this one? Why was George Floyd the one? Because we've seen a number of murders, right? But I think the difference is we've grown as Americans desensitized to murders by police weapons, right? Whether it's a gun or a taser, we've kind of grown used to that. We see it on TV and violence a lot. Gun violence is very normal to us, but seeing a knee, on a neck, and seeing that happen in real time, and just one physical body on another impacted us differently, right? Because
and him actually being tortured, basically being tortured to death.
Right.
So you see that you're watching someone be tortured, and it's another man, grown man, that you can see he's not fighting back, he's not punching, he's literally just begging for his life.
He's handcuffed.
He's telling, he's handcuffed. Oh my God, he's handcuffed. He's asking for a breath. He's saying, I cannot breathe. He said it 16 times. So people just, it's like you can't, I don't know if you've watched the full 8 minutes. I can't watch that full 8. I will not watch that. But from people who have watched it, they say it's like, it's traumatic to just see that, and some Americans, and I want to talk to this point because, like you said, you're noticing that people haven't been involved, in the past. Like, I feel like I was too involved before people were even involved. I was Sean Bell. I was, out there I was, back in the day when I was coming home from college, I was marching. I was doing, like, I've always felt the need to march for all these different protests, and I started to feel apathetic about it because I started to see, like, well, what's changing with the police? Like, is police brutality just going to be here to stay? Like, the Women's March, we marched and it was so many people, and the, and even the kids from Parkland who marched and tried to get gun laws. Like, what's happening? We still haven't met with the fact that politicians don't hear us. They see us, but they don't really hear us, right? And then one of the co-founders, or not a co-founder, because the co-founders are Black Lives Matter, the women, but one of the chapter leaders, I think from New York, he was interviewed by a correspondent on Fox News, and she basically, met with, the first thing is, how is violence going to be? You're advocating for violence, and how is that going to get your answer? And he says, you know what? First of all, like, he kind of like checked her, like, relax first, this country, don't come tell me about violence when this country is based on, didn't we fight off the British people? Wasn't that violent? The American Revolution wasn't, don't we go and fight and put bombs on Vietnam and all these different countries and take over different, governments that we don't agree with, and then we put in the politician that we side with that's democratic. So you're going to ask me, why am I advocating for, or not? And he wasn't really advocating. He's saying that we're going to have to use we're going to have to use force if you're not hearing us. And he also liked it. He used the example of the 1960s civil rights. He said that when people started looting, that's when laws were made. I don't know if I agree with that. I do feel like, I personally think that was his reason for it. I think that when people started boycotting, and you had people that basically affected, like, the bus system, like for a year, where Black people were just walking every day and said, you know what, we're not going to take the bus and you're going to lose money. And then they realized, okay, we got to stop because we need their money. Like, this is got to stop. Okay, come on, let's give them what they want. And I feel like we haven't gotten to that point, and what keeps happening is these protests and the vandalism, the looting, all that stuff. And I hate talking about it because I think it's just a distraction, because technically these are just people who are, first of all, we have to say one thing that I feel like people don't say enough. You've had people home for over 3 months. Like, people are upset. They don't have jobs. Some kids were supposed to have, like, their summer youth jobs that they don't have. They work at, like, the mall, they can't work there, and now you're upset that they can't, that they're angry, and they're going and buying but they're taking sneakers. Like, who cares? You have insurance. Like, at the end of the day, fix the problem. These people don't want to, you think people woke up in the morning and decided this is going to be I'm going to just go loot? You know what I mean? There's problems that we need to fix. And, I say this rant by saying, what's going to be done? Like, is Black Lives Matter movement, like, where does it actually meet with the actual lawmakers, and it actually changes into policies, and we actually have, like, measurable, not these police reforms that are just tokenisms for us. Like, when is it actually measurable? I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think New York, I will say, I know the last slew of police reform legislation that was passed. In full transparency, and I've spoken to some of the legislators that have worked on those bills. Those were years in the making. Like, I don't think these conversations. There was just an article in Politico yesterday about the Senate leader and the Assembly leader in New York. Like, these conversations were had in, like, early 2000s. Like, so legislation, I think people do need to ground themselves a little bit in reality when it comes to, like how legislation is passed, because
lobbyists talk
I'm like, that's it.
Yeah, because I'm like, I like Ramarley Graham, you were talking about it, Kerstyn, like, New York is not new to, like, these kinds of, like, murders at the hands of police violence. Amadou Diallo. There was just recently, like, I mean, these happen all the time, and I think, like, our legislators have been advocating, I will say, and I think New York is taking a stance. It's just very nuanced and complicated. I do think that the protests have been beneficial in kind of being a catalyst, like, in terms of, like, working across the aisle in the legislature, right? Like people were talking about it, like, this time Republicans were like, yeah, let's go for it. Like, enough is enough,
And the Dems have the Senate now, right?
And the Dems so it's like, I think people do need to be a little bit grounded in that. I will say that, but I don't think people should be casualties to like trash policy. So I think our legislators need to be held accountable as well. But I think a big part of it too is us as citizens, like making these demands collectively and having strategic plans. And that's why I say with Black Lives Matter, and I think the difference between like the 60s, right, and like the civil rights movement, like that wasn't organized. I think people really fail to understand just the level of organization that went into that. It was like, what, 382 days for the Montgomery bus boycott, right? So it was a long haul.
Wow.
And like, people don't know, like there were like geniuses, like, you know, SNCC, you had like Rosa Parks, like her narrative has been completely like, I think whitewashed. Yeah. And like, she was a private investigator that went down to really investigate like the rapes of like Black women in the Deep South. And like, it was her, it was lawyers, it was faith leaders. It was like, there was a strategic plan. And like, my only concern is who are the entities, or what is the entity rather, that is propelling like a progressive, and I use that in air quotes, Black agenda, like, because and Nicole Hannah-Jones just had a story featured in the Times, like, reform is not enough. We need economic, like the Black community needs more. We need reparations. I don't know how much more, like right now is the time on the federal level where we need to be advocating for that. And, you know, we need to demand that as a community, but like, where's the agenda? Even like the Black Panthers, like they had a list of demands, like, you know, these are organized movements that people need to understand. So who is at the forefront and in the background kind of creating that? And that's my concern with like.
Technically, that's the Democratic Party.
I don't think it can be. I don't think that it should be. I don't think that it should be. I don't think that it is. I think it needs to be a separate organization or groups or whatever that come together and coalesce and think about what exactly do we need in this moment in time for the Black community to help ameliorate, you know, disparities when it comes to economic progression, education reform, when it comes to housing. I mean, all of these policies that we see that impact the Black community adversely, they need to be attacked right in this moment. And us as citizens, you know, and, you know, living in these communities, we do need to come together and organize and demand these on all levels of government too. Because a lot of people are like, oh, the federal, you know, like, oh, in November, that's what I'm going for. I'm like, you need to be voting in every election. You need to be going to, I go to my assembly member's office and I talk to him. I go to my council members, like, but we need to like come together and really think about what it is for the Black community that we need now, because I don't really care what the Gap has to say about Black Lives Matter. I don't care what Target has to, like, I don't care about the corporate.
Let's talk about it. I mean,
everywhere you go, it's like, we care about Black lives, but like, we're paying,
Netflix
like,
does, Amazon does.
Your board is not diverse. You know, what are you doing for the Black community?
No, not a daggone thing.
Well, but we have to, so we recognize we're okay. We would be remiss if we do not at least recognize the fact that these corporations are finally empowering the movement. Just you know how important
in language,
in language, in influence, the fact that corporations as big as a Netflix, Amazon, Nike, Adidas, everybody's saying Black Lives Matter. That helps. That. I know we feel, and I know people are feeling that it's like, oh, they're just co-opting the movement and they're just using it for dollars. But it's almost like, I know the power in my business when a brand gets behind a client of mine and what it can do, an artist, a talent. I know it's the same situation with this movement. What it does is we're lending our influence, our name, our trust in this movement. We're saying, because not only are we saying the term, because Black Lives Matter is a term, we believe in it, we're also saying that this is reputable, believe them. This is what it's doing. So that's why white America's like so huffing and puffing. They're so upset because they're like, all their safe places. This is where I go to watch sports. This is where I go. That's why they hated Kaepernick so much, because NFL is their place.
You're making it political, right? Right.
And they're making it political. You're making it political, but in the sense that they're also giving it they're
legitimacy.
Legitimacy, exactly.
So white people, Not to
white people, not to us. We
right.
we know.
But
we've been trying.
I guess it's hard. It's hard to accept, and I have so many responses.
Okay.
I'm bursting at the seams. But for the corporate thing, it's hard to accept that because these are also people that appropriate our everything, right? Okay. So you got the Gap also putting out like, get Fleek with this new hoodie. You know what I mean? Like all this ridiculous.
Right.
And we're not credited for any of it. And so now it feels like, here you are putting Black Lives Matter. And I agree for the elevation and awareness and, you know, constantly making it an issue that now we're holding their feet to the fire, right? Because they don't want to lose those coins. But at the same time, it also just feels like, all right, you going to really be riding with us? Or are you just going to do this collab with Yeezy and think that that's going to, you know, satisfy
the CEO is an Indian American woman. She's a person of color, the CEO of Old Navy.
Girl, that don't mean nothing to me because we all buy into.
She's a person of color. But it's, no, I mean, I feel like we
are talking about Black issues. We're not talking about people of color issues. Totally. We're talking about being very Black. Yes. Capital B. And that's where I feel like we start to kind of, you know, dilute ourselves for them.
Yeah. Right.
And that scares me a little bit, you know what I mean? And I think also like to the earlier point about what we need to do legislatively, I'm torn, right? Because I am a lobbyist and I know how legislation works. But at the same time, I'm also kind of feeling like, am I using my imagination to its fullest degree, right? Like, are we really thinking about imaginative ways to have safety in our communities, to be able to police ourselves, and not just continuously go based on reform and what we know to be true for the past 200 years. What's next? You know, let's think about being futuristic Black people, and what does that look like? And I don't think that we've been allowed to use our imagination in that way ever. And so now we're having to really ask ourselves, like, because there's a lot of fear. You know what I mean? And that's how they use, well, that's what they use to control us, right? We live in a capitalist world, right? And so we have to address capitalism if we're going to talk about Black issues, if we're going to talk about reparations, if we're going to talk about that we weren't allowed to have housing rights until 52 years ago. Both of my parents weren't allowed to own property when they were born. So it's like when you start to put that stuff contextualized and really start to see the intersectionality across all of it, we need something entirely different that we've never even thought of before. And that's where I feel like, to Jackie's point, we need leadership in that way that we just don't have right now. We don't.
And it can't be Reverend Al Sharpton. Like, ain't nothing, let me tell you something. I have no problem with the Reverend, but come on. I mean, I'm gonna leave it.
It can't be D-Ray either. It can't be D-Ray. Campaign Zero. No, like no. I want no parts of your Campaign Zero.
And it can't be Sean King either. Like that's a whole other. Like it
I want to hear. Okay, I want to hear who do you guys think? Who are we putting?
You, Jackie. Okay. I want to see y'all.
Jackie would be.
You know
great.
What I mean? I want to see you guys. At the table.
Just do a podcast and we'll. And I'll donate, girl. But
I agree with you, Norah, on that point. Is that I worry, even in the conversations that I'm seeing being had, like like a lot of the Black leaders that are being propelled are like Twitter superstar, and I have nothing against these people, but again, it's rooted, I think, in like this weird like white supremacist kind of narrative of like they have to be highly educated, you know what I mean, like Ivy League educated, they're writing for multiple, you know, publications, and they speak a certain way, and you know, and I've been grappling with that. Like I've gone to an Ivy League institution, like but like I also understand, I've been doing community organizing for quite some time, and like I was just yesterday handing out food at the Polo Grounds, right? And like the women.
Ooh, the Polo Grounds, girl. They don't know. If y'all don't know what the Polo Grounds is, listen.
Yeah. That was my first time there. And I went there with my assembly member, Al Taylor, and we handed out food. And the two women that organized this, one is the president of the Tennis Association, is obviously a resident there. These women, older women, organized a delivery system. They got donations. They advocated to get donations since March every day for the residents of the Polo Grounds.
Wow.
They created a whole delivery system, right? Like, I mean, these are the people I think that need to have a seat at the table as well.
Wow.
And you know, and that's my whole thing, even like in the work that I'm doing now. And I think I had to step back myself because I was like, why do we always let other people come into our communities and tell us like this paternalistic kind of view of like what we should be doing? We have examples when you look at Tulsa, you know, and Black Wall Street. Like, it's not like we don't know how to do these things. It's just we have been literally, like, domestic terrorism was like the root of like ending that. But like, we have examples. We know how to do this stuff. It's just we need the resources. And I think I worry about that too, is like, I don't want this narrative to be like, this is the type of Black person that can only speak to these Black issues, right?
And
like,
I see a lot of that on Twitter. I see a lot of shaming. And I went to the Ivy Leagues, but I guess I've always credited myself with being able to talk to my local crackhead, okay, and in the boardroom, because we need everybody, honey, okay? We need everybody. And you got to be able to communicate. And there's this elitism that's kind of leading us, like, oh, you haven't read this book, this book, this book, this book. Girl, if you haven't read this, then that gives you all the directions you need for the revolution. And it's like, listen, y'all not understanding. You preaching to the choir. We have to reach the people at the bottom. We have to reach the people that are looting. Why? Why are they looting? Where is this desperation coming from? Why are they, you know, busting fireworks, which we know there's been a lot of conspiracy theories, okay? But why is that the case, you know? And really think about what not having a summer job means. It's not just not being able to buy Jordans. Sometimes it means not being able to have lights and water. So, like, we have to talk about the economic disparities, and we have to remove our elitism as Democrats. That we just lean into. Right? Because that's something we have learned to kind of give us legitimacy as Black people. Well, I went to this and I got this degree and I read this book. So now you guys can trust me and know what I'm talking about. Like, that's what we have to move away from. And that's a long road.
And I will say, I just want to say this because you just got me hyped with that, Norah, because and this is why, like, with the Dem Party, I'm a registered Democrat. Like, I'm not going to be out there like attacking the Dem Party like that. But like, even within the Democratic Party, and I'll silo it here to New York State, what I'm seeing happening with these far left progressive groups, I wrote a whole little thing on my Instagram yesterday, because I am, you know, registered with the Justice Democrats, right? Like I get their emails, right? I'm on their listservs. Why are you blasting 7 times in one day for me to donate $5 to your camp? Like, I got so annoyed. I'm like, post-election, and I get it, it's campaign debt and you got to raise money, but the way that I think that they're targeting low-income people and then positing it as like, oh, we have the masses that like back us. I'm like, it's the same kind of tactics. Like, but I don't see anybody.
You think that?
I think so.
You don't think it's just
emailing somebody asking them for $10 a day that doesn't have
all do it though.
7 times in one day? It's a little bit, to me, it's awkward. I was a little bit upset by that. But like,
I hear you, but that's just not, I mean, that's just, the Democrats, they need funding, because the Republicans are ramping up. I
agree. But then don't attack each other then, because that's another thing too within the Democratic Party is we're so busy fighting one another in the Democratic. Now I see a lot of the far, I know I'm going to spark some chords here, but like a lot of the far left progressives are now going for like CBC people, the Congressional Black Caucus members. I saw on Twitter, because it's a death trap for me. But like, they're like, oh, like after that Ingle and Bowman race, that was the big one in New York Congressional District 16, where they're like, oh, you know, all of them endorsed, all the CBC endorsed Ingle, you know, and I'm like, hey, like, that was a decision that was made.
Old school stuff.
Whatever, but like, why do we attack one another when we have to really be strategic?
But also, who is leading that? Who is leading the Justice Democrats? Are there Black people in leadership there?
No Black, and they're all Ivy educated. They go into communities. I don't see people of color on their organization. And I'm sick of it. I will say I am sick of it. I am sick of them using tokenizing Black people in a way that is not beneficial. Meanwhile, on the back end, they're running their progressive agendas that are not reflective of the communities that they're going in. I don't think justice.
And they're not including us. We're not making those decisions. We're not in that room. Instead, we are their warriors and their soldiers, and they use us and tell us this is what to say, this is what you do. But we're not helping, you know, inform the decision making around these policies. They went and knocked on the doors of these council members. Danny Drum, who is a white gay council member who I adore personally, worked for personally, and know he is one of the most progressive allies that we have. And yet you have people coming here from Ohio and everywhere else, you know, really taking over this movement and using this momentum to get their own policies pushed and their own agenda pushed without really including us in that decision-making process. So we just have to be a lot smarter. And I think it's hard because with social media, we copy and paste, retweet, repost, and we're not thinking about really who is managing all of this. Who's managing the left?
Well, there's no, I mean, we're in the beginning.
Nobody.
We're in the beginning. But we're in the beginning of this all. Like this started in like.
Sorry, we just went off.
I know. You guys, don't forget.
We lost the chair of a major committee. Like we lost. I mean, like people gotta really think about the implications too of certain things. And I'm not endorsing any candidate, or you will not hear that from me. But I will say is that people look like in this social media world that we live in, it's like it's easy to get get sound bites from people, right? And think that they're for us, and they're not. With that seat, we lost the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, right?
Yeah.
That's going to affect the funding. Let's not even talk about redistricting, right? Like people are like, oh, this person's been in office for 30-something years. And again, I'm not endorsing anything.
But I'll be honest. We do need a shift in this. We've had these people sitting. I mean, who's your city council in Harlem? Is it still?
I have Bill Perkins. Bill Perkins. I'm gonna leave it there. Bill Perkins.
So I'm just gonna say, and how long? I mean, is that 25 years now? Like, I think we're the progressive movement in the Democratic Party is tired, is sick and tired, right? And yes, what we're saying here is that we all need to speak the same language, but there's still like people that are in this party that are not even being heard, that are like, oh, just sit down, wait your turn. And then we know how to handle this. Don't worry. We know how to deal with the Republicans. We know how to pass things. And it's just the same thing. And it's honestly, it's just pushing the status quo. That's all. That's really what politics technically is. So we want stuff now. And in our generation is really the millennials and the Zs. They're the ones that are going to change this system. I really believe that. I believe that what we've been able to do, like just like this Tulsa, Oklahoma rally that the Gen Z did, like how they
come on, TikTokers.
Oh, God. I watched the video, some of the videos. You have some girls like, I can't believe it worked. They're like, I can't believe it.
Yo, I loved it. I love it.
It's like it just shows you. They're like, we're not organized now, because this would have been a great way to really organize it and really like, how do we know? Let's organize. All right, we'll have the Gen Zs doing it. We'll have this. We'll have that. We'll have our attorneys working on, legislation. We'll have it. But it's so new right now that we need to kind of get our bearings. And I think, like you said, to your point, it takes some time to actually even come up with proper legislation. It could be another 5 years, 10 years from now until we really have something that's meaningful.
But we can't lose the power that we do have. And how do we move our current sitting Dems, right, including Black members, to get more to the left and become more progressive, right? How do we help to engage them versus totally canceling them?
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's not even just attack. It's like we need new blood. Like I think that it's almost like, and I would jump into, I guess I could jump into this next topic about symbolism. One of the questions I had is about the statues that you see that are being taken down, right? And I said to myself, it's so interesting that, they want to take down all these statues now. You have Pelosi talking about, in the congressional office, she wants to take out these paintings, she wants to take out these statues. And I say to myself, Pelosi's she's been in government for maybe 40 years. She's been a congresswoman for well over 30 years. Do you mean to tell me that today she decided that it's now offensive? That today she looked up at it and said, that's pretty offensive. We need to take that down. So my question to you is, are these people even in the right place? Because I feel like those things to me are just symbols. Like that it's more symbolic to take it down. I think there is something to say about the fact that it might have meaningful impact in for next generation. People won't see this statue of a slave trader or a statue of a general that wanted to keep, that was for the South and the Confederates. So I guess I'm asking a couple things in one, but my thing is people like Pelosi, people that are in the Democratic Party, who, again, I tip my hat off to the work she's done. I can't totally say she's horrible. However, you've been here. Maybe it's time for you to sit this one out, and let's get these people with these that are bubbling and have voices. Let's give them a chance, because it's time we need people that are more progressive. They were progressive in their time. Now they aren't. I mean, what do you guys think?
I'm torn. I think, it's hard. Again, imagination, right? And so you look at all these symbols and these statues that we have up. I just read something where they're like, oh, we're going to get rid of all the schools named after Woodrow Wilson because of his racist policies. I'm like, well, throw the whole country away, honey. Because like what? Like everyone is racist. We talking Bush. Yeah. I read a meme that was like, oh my God, get rid of all your cash because they're all racist presidents and send it to me. Okay?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's
what
just
are we saying?
We can't escape it. And this is BS to me, because it's like, instead of actually addressing how we got here, what this country means, right? And the racism that's in the fabric of this country, how we became the superpower we did by free labor, you just want to take down a statue. That's not enough. You know what I mean? And it means nothing to me. It means nothing. The only reason why it means something is because it means something to the racist, people who have some sort of like ideology behind this statue. That makes me want to take it down. But outside of that, like, I think it's just symbolic.
Yeah, I agree. But then can you speak to Nancy Pelosi now? I mean, wanting to now see it as...
I worked for fines. You know what I mean? Like I worked
another one
on the Hill with some of these leaders who I don't want to discredit the work that they were able to do, right? In a very real way. But again, I don't think, how can we expect one person to like dismantle racism in this country and stand out and be that lone shark? Like they're going to totally not get reelected. What about that? They're not going to have any fundraising. They're not going to have any money. So I think like at some point we have to address how we fundraise and like what the impact of having term limits means when we're talking about our politicians. At the end of the day, they're going to choose what's going to get me elected, period.
Yep.
Right? In power.
So,
yeah. I agree. I don't think that it should be on these like elected officials and legislators to like be the voice of like dismantling white supremacy. Like it's just, we need to really have conversations as to, like Norah said, how we got to this place. We're gonna have to throw everything away. Like everything's gonna have to be canceled. Like everything is rooted in white supremacy in America. That is what it is.
Can I just say one thing? I'm sorry to cut you off, but can I just say one thing? This is for you, Norah. You know how our conservative co-host, whenever he talks about the Democratic Party, he brings up the Democrats were the KKK and this, and I always say to him, if everything is KKK, like everything in America, like if you're gonna just blame Democrats for the origins of it, like we're just voting with whoever's giving us the rights at this point. Whoever we see, like, are y'all gonna talk about the things that we want? Okay, then we're gonna vote for you.
Right. Are y'all gonna let us live? Oh, all right, we gonna go.
Right. We know the money that we know Andrew Jackson. We know all these presidents, and we know they were all racist. Like
Lincoln did not free us. Free to say, like let's stop.
Like what are we doing? Like what are we saying?
We have to change entire school curriculums. Like I mean, like my network has like taken a vow. The board voted on like this resolution that like all of our curriculum has to now be vetted like by a like anti-racist like consultant. Like I mean, it's good. This is going to have major impact on like a lot.
Well, that's good though. Are you talking about?
No, that's great.
I think that's good though.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think the DOE is going to follow. I mean, they were allegedly doing that before. I don't know what that looks like per se, but
DeBose under that.
Carranza, in New York City, the DOE.
Oh,
I know that they, not nationally. No, I don't think they're
not nationally.
Sorry, no. Look at that. No. But I do think I wanted to just point. I do think it is performative. Like in my opinion, like it doesn't really mean anything to me to remove a statue, but I think in certain places in this country,
in the South,
you know, in the South, particularly in the mid, like in Tulsa, I was recently there, like these symbols have major impact on people's like mental health and emotional, like it is traumatizing. And when I talk to like residents who are Native American and African American in Tulsa, like we did this tour and they were like every day having to like come here and walk through this, you know, area and see the statue, or like even like recently they just voted, I think, in Tulsa to actually talk about integrate the Tulsa riots into the school curriculum. Before, it was not allowed. So you gotta, like, when we're talking about having these conversations, is very deep rooted and it's very nuanced. I think what we do as, and I'm not saying only Black people, but I think what we do as Democrats, and right, if I want to go even further, as liberals, is we settle for the scraps. Like, I don't care that you're removing the statue. I really genuinely don't, and I don't want to discredit the people.
We
like,
can't discredit it. Just for the listeners, we think we're not saying that we don't. We're take them off because they're dumb, and we don't. But honestly, we have bigger fish to fry. Is what we're saying.
Right. This is why I said we got to really think about what we want and make those demands and push for that. Like, you know, legislatively.
They're talking about getting rid of master bedroom, right? The real estate industry. Because of the term master. Y'all, if you don't get the hell up out of here.
Oh my gosh.
But I have to say,
I like foolishness.
That I kind of like. Because
you like that?
You want to have real change? Let us rent and buy homes without, you know, making sure that we have guarantors and this ridiculousness. And to me, that says something, you know what I mean? And stop requiring in the hood 40 times the rent in order to be able to rent a home. Like, that is going to signal to me y'all are about it. Taking rid of the word master.
And you can call it master. So you're saying you can still call it master. Just get me what I need to get. Make sure my people can.
Make sure we got a house. You know?
Facts. Okay, I'm going to change topics here because we have to talk about. I think we've talked about just the macro level of it, but let's talk about it in like corporate America. We have to deal, as Black women, we deal with, we all kind of, I mean, I think we all have worked in corporate America. You guys are still working in corporate America. And one of the people we typically meet in corporate America is Karen. And Karen typically has, she has this microaggression, she has microaggressions. She has these, just got a call. We have these, did you guys see me?
Yeah.
So she has these microaggressions, and honestly, I want to know, what do you guys think about Karen? How dangerous is she to the Black and brown people? Do you feel like, you know, is she like affecting our Black and brown people's safety? Like, because I really want people to understand this in context, because I think that they're taking this and it's a meme. It's funny to call a white woman Karen, but I don't think they really understand how serious it is. And not only in the corporate America, but in life in general. So I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Karen is very, very dangerous. Karen, I mean, and historically we've seen the implications of Karens throughout history. I think Emmett Till is one that like just resoundingly comes to mind. Like, and I think to your point is like now it's becoming almost like a caricature. Like it's like in jest, like, oh, haha, Karen, she's Karening me. But I'm like, this is, I mean, I think that they are probably one of the most dangerous groups of people in this country. And like, it's funny, but like, it's funny, but like we look at that guy, the guy who was in Central Park, I forgot his name.
His name is, he's also, is it John Cooper?
Yeah.
He's Amy Cooper.
Yeah,
he's a Cooper too. How crazy, like I always said, how like crazy did these two have to meet that just, I don't know. I think of like the sign of it, but continue please.
But these like that, luckily that didn't end up like the other way, you know, like he was able to walk home and go home and sleep and not be murdered or arrested and his livelihood changed all because of what, like, because she felt inconvenienced because she was the one who was like breaking the rules. So I'm like, and I came across this quote yesterday. Is Angela Davis. I don't know what year she said this, but she says, quote, straight Black men and white women will always be the weakest links in the struggle for equality because they view equality as achieving status with white men. The problem with that is that white men's status is contingent on the oppression of other people. And I think, you know, these Karens, they gotta be canceled. And I think the response to Amy Cooper, right, was great. I mean, I'm sure she was making a pretty penny at her job. You know, wow. And they need to be called out. Like, that is the good thing, I think, with social media, is that we're able to see this in real time. Like, we're able to, and these people are able to literally be canceled. And I think that's fine, but I think these Karens are dangerous in many facets. I've been, you know, victim to Karen type microaggressions and the workplace, and you know, and they're just so rampant. I think
What's an example? Can you give us an example of like a Karen? Have you ever had an example of Karens?
Yeah.
Like, she's aggressive. She's a little aggressive.
I've had so many examples. At nonprofits, I've been told that I was getting ghetto.
A Karen called you ghetto?
Wow.
In a meeting, I think I used the word get go, and she was like, "Oh, let's not get ghetto with it."
Wow.
And I'm a confrontational person in nature, so I had the conversation with her, and immediately tears. Immediately she went to HR.
Of course.
Wow.
And never meant it that way, and I was being aggressive. So that was one episode. I had another episode in a meeting with a VP, literally put her hands in my hair in a meeting, just like in awe of my fucking illustrious curls. Gonna have to get rid of that F word. And and in that moment, I felt frozen, right? Because I'm like, here we are in a room setting full of VPs, and like, you think I'm your doll, and you can literally just touch my hair into my scalp. And in her mind, it felt like, yeah, I just love your curls so much. And when I checked her, also another HR incident, right? Where you're being too aggressive. We could have handled this in a conversation. You didn't have to get angry about it, sort of situation. So when you have those moments happen in your professional career, especially as a young woman starting in her career, it really kind of disables you and makes you feel, you know, kind of like you're being gaslit, right? Like, am I crazy? Did I overreact? Like, what's wrong with me? And that then, now I'm having conversations in my current job. Just had a review where they're like, oh, we love you, you're awesome, but you got to trust your instincts more. And so I had to explain to them, like, well, let me explain why I don't trust my instincts. You know, let me explain why I move, you know, to a level of perfection, because I am now paranoid about every step that I take, right?
Yeah.
And what that does to your psyche. And so it has a number of ways that it can impact an individual. My girlfriend was at Whole Foods in Union Square, one of the most liberal epicenters of New York City, and was called the N-word, right?
Wow.
And she broke down immediately, didn't know what to do.
Wow.
So I think, like, in these moments, it's just like, we have to understand that they have real power.
Yep.
And they have belief. We look at Elijah, what's his last name? McNeil. I don't know if you all heard about this recent case.
Yes, Elijah.
Sorry, Elijah McClain. And someone, I'm sure it was a Karen, that called saying, this boy looks suspicious in my neighborhood, right? And now he's dead.
Yep.
And so to me, it's like, there are real actions that are taken because people believe white women in this way. You know what I mean? So,
and they helped to bring Trump here. That's the biggest Karen.
Okay. They couldn't even support
voted in droves, and that's why it kills me too. Even like with the Women's March, you mentioned earlier, and I had reservations, and I'm a feminist. I'm a staunch feminist, and I call myself a womanist now. But I can't with even like the white feminism, like, and I've been having to like literally have conversations with my white women friends, and talk about how like certain, like I think one example for me of a Karenism is like when people are like, you're so smart. You're like constantly like, I like in meetings, like, oh my gosh, you're so articulate. I have one person that's in a cohort that I'm in this program. And she's like, you're so effing smart. And I'm like, I don't need you to say that to me 15,000 times. Like, let's not even mention like my credentials, like, they blew you out the water, honey.
Yes.
I better be smart, right?
You're not giving me a compliment. So like,
she thinks she's complimenting you.
I was just like, but it's like rooted
compliment
in
your
like,
other friends. Compliment your white girl. Why don't you compliment the white girl? Like, why are you complimenting me?
I had to I'm not going to name the organization, but like I had to separate myself from an organization that I was affiliated with that was run by white women, white affluent women, right? And they wanted to like revamp things like after all of the incidents that have happened, and I didn't feel comfortable. I said, I don't think it's the right time to do it. They were like, well, let's just have a Black speaker. I'm like, what? A Black speaker talking about what? And they were like, well, you know, defunding the police. And this is why I say it's very dangerous with like some of these movements. They're like, defunding the police. And so I was like, what about defunding the police? What about Black Lives Matter? Because this is like Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, well, what about it? And she's like, we just need to do it. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. She's like, let's go to our resource bank of speakers that spoke last year. There's only 2 of what, eight things that we had, events that we had thrown. And one Black woman is a comedian, and no shade on it, but like I don't really see her talking about political stuff. So I'm like, I don't understand. And I'm just like, and then the other person works in like politics, but like I was just like, so you're just gonna pick a Black speaker to talk about an issue that like I separated myself. And the good thing, I will say this is the colleague that I've been working on that project, she's a white affluent woman. She was an ally in that moment. We both stepped down together. And she said, I'm not going to do this if you don't do this. And we said, we separated from the organization. No shade on it, but I was just like, I could, and the person got angry at me, and I'm like, you're telling me like you're here to support Black women and support Black people, but like here you are gaslighting me for questioning you for wanting to just host an event about Black Lives Matter. But no, I was so lost.
No context.
No context. And then like just being like, let's have one of the speakers from the past. And I had suggested like prominent other like speakers that we could have vetted.
I'm sure.
And I was just very upset by it. But you know, I think the good thing for me was also seeing the power and allyship in that moment. My colleague and I, we stepped back from it, but then also like, I've been more cognizant too of like how I step into these spaces, because I think a lot of it too, and this is like unpacking like the trauma of like being rooted in white supremacist culture. We talked about going to PWIs, the trauma that you incur in those institutions. Like it's going to be a lot of unpacking and dismantling white supremacy. And I think, there's organizations that are doing great jobs of it. I think the organization I work for is really trying to make change. But it's going to be a lot of work. But these Karens, they're out there. And that's why I said, I don't need you to post a Black square. Like, I don't need you to post hashtag Black Lives Matter and then go into the workplace and like harass women of color, like Norah was saying. Like, I mean, those are examples of true harassment. I think like
true harassment.
Termination, if like that were the other way around, like people, like a Black woman would have been like terminated or demoted, like this. And I've seen that happen.
Would never go to HR because HR is not there for me.
Right.
It's there for them.
Yeah.
And that has been made very clear.
So that's something else to talk about. And there have been, I've seen a rise in like a lot of Black women who work in HR. Like I have a good friend of mine who used to who was in HR and worked at HBO, worked for all these big Fortune 500 companies. And she tried to advocate for, but it's hard when they're like, I want her gone. She's got to go.
Oh yeah.
Get her out of here.
My coworker was fired.
I don't feel comfortable.
Yep.
I don't feel comfortable. And the HR person's talking to her like, well, we got to give her a chance. You didn't get to, she hasn't, you haven't met. And like, there's certain procedures. I don't care. She is not good for the culture or for the work culture. Yeah. And that's the coded language. Culture. Like they don't meet the work culture.
You're not a team player. You're not a player. You're aggressive.
You're aggressive is the key. I hear that all the time. Aggressive, and I just get so mad.
Yeah. And
I get mad.
But the worst part about this thing we're saying is I have so many stories. I know so many stories. I've heard so many stories. Yes. And it's like, what we have to, and I think this is something, maybe this is an offline discussion, but what needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of organization because it's not just the police that are the problem, because we have to be fair, the police brutality, maybe we're not seeing all of everything on tape, but let's say if it's under 5% that's happening in a year, there's other ways that discrimination and Black people's bodies are in danger. not getting work, not getting hired, shopping, and not being able.
Yeah.
There's so much, shopping, and not being able.
Yeah.
There's so much. It's so nuanced. Yeah. It's so woven into the fabric of America and our lifestyle that for us we're just like we just keep pushing. You know, I watched a video that this comedian, he's Indian, he's Muslim Indian, he's a very good looking guy, I can't remember his name. He used to work for the Daily Show.
Minaj, Hassan Minaj. Yes.
He did did you guys watch that video?
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was good.
He did a great job.
Okay, but there was one part of it when he said, and it burned me because I've heard it so much and I thought about it, when he said, and he's talking to his people. He's talking to Indian people, not even Americans, just Indian people in general. And he says, what we call them, and there's a word for them. And then he says, what we call Black people, God forbid your daughter wants to marry one of them. And that hit me somehow. I don't know what it did. It just hit me so hard because it just reminded me, I'm like, who the F do these people think they are? You know what I mean? And that they would say such things about us, like, don't marry us, as if excuse me, like.
Well, that's why I say I don't like the term people of color. I don't care
I
about
don't either.
anyone.
I don't either. I really
I
don't.
want to talk Black issues, black, because everyone is so afraid of that. And I actually got my job where I'm at now to not say African American and to say Black. Because I think that there is power in Black, and people are very afraid of it because of the Black Power movement, right?
Yeah.
And we are leaning.
Well, they just wanted to be politically correct. Before they thought African American was politically a correct term, it's wrong. No, but I agree with you. But the reason why I bring up that statement because I just thought about the way I've heard that statement from so many people growing up. Oh, I would never marry a dark-skinned man. Oh, I would never date a Black person. I would never marry a Black woman. Oh, I would never date. I've heard it, and I just, you internalize it, and you don't realize you're internalizing it, and it's like you're like, oh yeah, that's horrible. Or you say, why wouldn't you? Like you might get into a little bit of
and I have two Black male friends who married into one is Indian, one is Pakistani. And they had to do so much work with these two families because of the underlying racism that exists.
But that's what I'm saying. So this is another. So we've got like our work is it's not even. It's like if you think police brutality is the only thing that is affecting Black people, reform that is not even. We're not even at the crux of where we need because we don't even like the fact that an Indian American family will tell his son, do not marry a Black woman. And a Black woman could be the freaking president of the United States, vice president. She could be like, you could have married you a Barack Obama. Oh, guess what? Yeah. Your daughter could have married you a Barack Obama, but because you're so racist, and you have the same complexion as us. I'm just saying how it's internalized all over America, all over the world, how it's internalized in every culture. There's so much more that we need to do that I don't even know where to begin, Right. So I appreciate corporations lending a voice to it, but I want to see how they're going to change it because if you don't have executives, if you don't have, people in your executive C-suite positions that are actually people of color, Black people, then don't even, like, you're not part of this, you know what I mean? And throwing money to a problem, throwing money to Black Lives Matter, I then go, okay, so now what is Black Lives Matter doing to start changing these things? Because laws are one thing, but people have in their heart, how are you going to change what's in their heart? Yep. At the end of the day, the biases that people have. So anyways, okay, let me change the subject. Defunding the police, guys. I wanted to keep our conversation going, but so one of the things.
Look, I have time for this. Yeah,
I have time for this one.
All right. So I know. I just want to keep it so that it's bite-sized so people can enjoy.
Joe Rogan be having like 3-hour podcasts.
Oh my goodness! Okay, and he makes so much money. Oh,
I know.
Goodness.
100 million.
What in the world?
We gotta step it up with these podcasts, okay? We gotta really step it up.
How? And he has so much political power. I was just like, influence, to be honest, I can't listen to his stuff. I mean, I know so many people that love it. It's just
I'm an avid listener.
I love it.
It's not, I just haven't. I've like listened to
some parts are hard. Listen,
it's hard.
Some episodes are hard.
Because sometimes you want to punch it, you want to punch through the screen, but sometimes you have to hear the other side. You have to hear.
I do believe that too.
How they break it down, because he's kind of progressive, but then he also regresses at the same time and like says stuff that I'm like, well, what about black on black crime? What? Like,
I hate that. So that's no.
Girl,
like that line could just like, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with us.
Cancel that line.
Right. I don't want to hear what about black on black crime.
Yeah.
But let's talk about defunding the police. Okay, I want to hear your take on this new measure. I mean, activists have been talking about wanting to take money out of the police and put it into social programs, money into social programs. But now finally, we're hearing there's a lot of politicians who are kind of getting behind this term. So I really want to know, what do you guys think? Do you think this is something that can actually happen in practice? Do you think that we will start to see a lot more states defund the police, or is this something that is just another one of these aberrations that we just keep hearing and it's just nothing's gonna happen?
I'll just take the first crack. Just that one, I want to give a shout out to the people who've been working on this for the past 50 odd years. Mm-hmm. I also think everyone should read Our Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis, again, to kind of get our minds working into the imaginative ways that we can self-police. I don't even want to use the word police, where we can self-regulate, I should say. And then I think for
self-regulate.
Self-regulation in the sense of, I don't want to keep saying like, how do we police each other? Like, to me, that word in and of itself is creating this idea of what policing looks like. Mm-hmm. And it's creating the idea that prison is also a consequence, right? And so it's like, how do we just get our brains outside of all of this and really think about the why and the issues of why we are where we are, right? Why do we need police? Because crime happens. Well, what is defined as a crime? When crimes were expanded in definition in the 50s and 60s, under both Reagan and Nixon, and all these issues of being able to incarcerate even more individuals so that we can also have the prison industrial complex. Like, all these things are interwoven together. As far as where we are today, I will say New York City, we have a deficit of $10 billion.
Yep.
Okay? The pandemic is real.
Just wipe this out.
No, seriously.
Us clean out. Yep. And I can't imagine
so
what other cities and states are going through. That's why Texas opened up and why they're dealing with what they're dealing with now, right?
Yep.
And so we look at our revenues and they're down, and we have this huge gap. And now we're talking about defunding the police, which I can get behind. But what I don't like is all these organizations saying, well, give it to us instead.
Yep.
Well, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, reinvestment into community services. Well, what does that even mean? Because a lot of these are just words and terms that are being thrown around. Like, who's running this money? How is this effective? How are we making sure that people are actually getting jobs with your job training? How are we making sure that people are having some sort of economic equality when we go into this room, and that it's not about just helping the poor Black and brown folks anymore? So for me, it's I'm sorry, I'm rambling because it's just so complicated and so layered. And I want us to be realistic in our approach. If we defund the police, I don't necessarily see that going into community services because we have this deficit. That's why I brought it up. Okay. And I also think that it's also very sexy of a term right now for politicians and others to kind of get behind, and no one has really done the work on what that truly, truly looks like.
Well, some Camden, New Jersey has. Camden, New Jersey is an example.
What are they doing?
They had like a really bad police police department, and they wiped it out and rehired everybody. Like, they just fired everyone and rehired.
I'm sorry. And they're also the elimination of police. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't think we should like. Do any of you believe in abolishing police?
I do not. I don't believe in the abolition.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I do in a long-term play. I think that it will take 50 to 100 years to fully have, an abolished police presence.
Utopia.
Yes, but we need to work towards that. And that's what I mean by what does that look like, right?
Right.
So when I hear defund, that means the elimination of monies. I know, I hate that they use the word defund because just like I'm a grammar person and I'm like, that ain't the right word. You just
like
want to
reallocation more.
Yes, reallocate funds.
Funny you say that. I have something to say about that. It's funny you say that.
And that's, so if that's what we're talking about, then that's very different. Yes, people are working on that.
I mean, everything you said, Nora, like, I agree with for the most part. I think there are examples nationally and internationally of communities that are able to self-police. Like, we don't need these aggressive measures or tactics, and we don't need outsiders. I think in New York, if you look at the force, a lot of in the city, a lot of, even though there's been a major amount, I think, of efforts to diversify the police force, right? And that's a very political conversation too, because we'll talk about unions. It gets very nuanced, but I mean, you have a majority of the police force here in New York City that don't even live in the city. And I don't understand why
they can't afford it. They can't afford it either. To be fair, they can't afford it. They can't afford it. You can't live in Manhattan.
But like for city employees, I remember I worked for the city. You're required within 90 days to either to live or to relocate back to the city.
Boroughs, right?
Why can't that be a measure that we can take for the police, for the police unit? I mean, I think there are ways that we can make changes, right, in the police force. I think, to your point, defunding, I don't know what that, like, I haven't seen a consistent plan of like how this money is going to be reallocated. And maybe I need to do more research, but I do think that we just need to reallocate resources in a way that is equitable to communities like that are disenfranchised. I don't know what that would look like. And I think that there needs to be more voices at the table that are making those decisions, right? But like, and to the earlier point, when you asked about abolition of, or abolishing the police, I think in the long term, yes, I think we could have a model where we really don't need police officers. I think it will take time. I also worry about the implications that would have on safety for communities of color, for women. Like, I start to think about like other factors that play into it, and it does make me a bit nervous. I live in an area, right, where like they built a police precinct a block and a half away, and I've seen changes like that have occurred. Like, there was a time when I wouldn't be able to walk around in the middle of the night, you know, in my neighborhood. That's just a reality. And I think that we need to understand like what the implications of that would be. And I think, again, who are the voices behind these movements? Like, who are the groups that are running this? Because, you know, the implications could be very adverse for like communities, black communities, I think.
And I understand your point, Jackie, about, you know, crime happening in Black and brown communities. And that's why I think I do believe in abolishing the police in the long-term play, because in that time, while we're working towards that, we also need to have a redistribution of wealth, right?
Yes.
So that we don't have the need to go out and commit crimes, if that makes sense. Because the why, I don't think gets talked about enough. Like, Black people don't just go up into schools and shoot up schools and kill 100 kids that they don't even know. There is intentionality behind our crimes. And we need to look at that and really start to understand, like, is it coming from a place of desperation? What are the other opportunities and resources here available so that crimes can go down and they aren't committed at the rate in which they are in Black and brown communities? So to me, I just think that conversation needs to happen more about the redistribution of wealth and in tandem with, you know, abolishing the police.
But there's still other crimes against women that I think that is still, I mean, even if people are wealthy, there's wealthy men that beat their wives, there's sexual violence against women, you know, even against men. So there's still a need for police, you know. I think they should be called the peacekeepers. I think that's what we should start calling them, peacekeepers. I think the way we have to change the way we look at these people. Maybe even the way they dress should be maybe lighter colors. Maybe it should be like, instead of that dark color, maybe they should be like I think for me, the police used to be they used to be like respectful, you know what I mean? Respectable human beings. You would see them in the street when you were younger and you would wave at them and they would wave back. Now police officers they won't even look at you in the eyes when you're walking past them. They're very, you know, it's almost like they're cold. And I also feel like for them too, it's a protection of mechanism for them, because they feel like everybody hates them, right? And a lot of these, we can't paint, this brush on all of these police officers being horrible human beings. But we also do know that, even if you're not the police officer that's committing vicious attacks, vicious violence, all these things on Black and brown people, you know who they are, right? And doesn't that make you, implicit into whatever crimes these people are doing? You know what I mean? Isn't that the same thing? But then again, you have to turn it again on it and say, well, if these police officers know who's doing this stuff, and they know in the locker room, oh God, Billy, this guy, every time I have to go on the beat with him, he's like gonna attack all these Black kids, and I'm tired of it. But he can't go against him, because if he needs him for backup, he's not gonna have it. And he's ostracized, and he's gone from the force. He will lose his pension. So there's just so
That's
much.
Why I say throw the whole thing away, because it is rooted in slave patrols. Like, how are you going to change? Yeah. How are you going to change literally the culture in which it was created?
I agree with that. Yeah.
I hear you on women's safety. I hear you on child abuse.
Right, child.
But when a child is being abused, that parent isn't automatically sent to prison. There are levels. There are Administration for Children's Services. They have a whole system in which they work with the family and the child. If they need to separate the child from the family, they do that. There is an entire therapy counseling session that happens with families to reunite them. And then if they feel like it's too unsafe, then that child is permanently separated from that family.
Yeah, so but if a woman's getting her, if she's also in a
I'm not saying to apply the same exact thing, but I'm saying we need to use our brains creatively to think of other ways to handle these issues.
I agree.
And that's what I mean. It's just like throw them in prison.
The police officers are not mental health counselors. Like, their police officers training is just, I think, is not sufficient. One, for the scope of the work that they're doing, I mean, it really isn't. And I think, we need to really reevaluate that. I think, to your point, Nora, like, when you look at historically at the roots of like the police force in this country, like police were once like the slave catchers, like back in the day. It's rooted in like, we call like this white supremacist, like there needs to be a class of people that are just below for like this entity to exist. So to Nora's point, I think if you level the playing field for Black folks in this country by giving them economic resources and access to the same systems for progression as our white counterparts, we might be able to see some radical change. We might not even need the police force at all. But I will say, like, violence against women, I do worry about that. Donald Glover has a bit. Like, I remember he was like, I never have to think about walking in my car. Like, he was like, this woman I went on a date with, she was like, can you walk me to that car? He's like, as a man, it's just something that we don't really have to process. And it's a reality for a lot of us women. But I do think that there are tangible measures that they can take. Because, again, it's about not like kind of short-term progress and long-term progress. Like, yes, abolition to me seems very, like, it would be ideal, right? But it's that will take a long period of time, right?
Well, it takes work on humanity. That's a separate conversation. That's the police.
But what are we doing now? So like Black and brown children, because I see these police officers, I live in Harlem, and I've seen them go up to people who own homes in own brownstones and ask people, what are they doing there? Bro, I own this brownstone. Like, how is that allowed? It's like, there's no impunity. There's no, like, these officers, I feel like in many ways feel like they can just do and say whatever.
It's the government, but you guys don't forget the government. These are government sanctioned, like this institutions. Like, you can't forget that. You're talking about
breaks it down. Yes.
Yeah. You're saying that why is a police officer going up to, a homeowner who's in front of his home and asking, what are you doing there? You forget that Harlem used to be, hate to say it, from after the 80s to maybe like the early 2000s, it was like you couldn't even go up to Harlem,
right?
And I lived in Manhattan all my life on the Upper West Side, and my parents, my mom used to say to me, like, you can't go past 110th Street because it was crazy. It was crazy up there, and unfortunately, we all know why. It has nothing to. It's what how they try to the war on drugs, and that's a whole other conversation. But the point of what I'm saying is, what happens in these communities once it becomes gentrified now these these taxpayers are like, oh no, I bought this place. You're going to keep me safe here.
Right.
I'm spending money. So make sure that I don't want to devalue my, I want to make sure that no one's standing outside and, drinking alcohol or catcalling women in front of my place. So make sure that you're patrolling, because I don't want it. I mean, obviously they're not talking to the police. It's not that direct, but that, in a response to these people who are investing into these communities, they want it safe. Brooklyn's the same.
This is why home ownership to me, because gentrification, you brought up that to me is colonization at its finest. And we do not talk about it in New York. I mean, we talk about it in New York, but we don't talk about ways to like really get to the root of these issues. You got people that come to these neighborhoods, they get priced out, they can't afford. And this is why I think some of these people are behind a lot of these quote unquote progressive groups, but your policies really aren't that progressive because you're going into areas, because let's be real, you're priced out of like downtown Manhattan. You go uptown, you come into an area, you know nothing about it. You don't really take the time to understand the community members or to even invest in like businesses that are owned by like Black and brown, but you come in and then you kind of stake claim and you're, and I get it. Like you own property, you don't want the value of your property to be devalued, right? Which that's a whole other conversation. But like, let's talk about real ways to economically empower Black people. Harlem is now predominantly white. Like I think I was reading, it's like it's a predominantly, yes. I mean, it's heartbreaking to me. And then I think about even like representation.
That is gentrifying at the highest rate in
and
New
that's
York
why it's so
City
safe to walk
Harlem.
around in Harlem at night.
Where'd you say?
Bed-Stuy is now the number one, gentrifying.
It's crazy, and it's like, let's have the conversation and about how can we create public programs. Hey, I'd much rather a public program that's helping people to become first-time home buyers or to be able to buy within their community. I saw some on the New York State's website where they have programs for people to be able to buy investment properties. These come once every 5 years, I feel like. Why can't we create more opportunities like that for people to actually advance?
That's why we need reparations.
Well, we also have to think about it. Maybe it's not even programs. Maybe we have to think about, we're thinking about it too big and we have to think about it in front of our face. Why are we not working with each other and saying, listen, you, me, John, James, and Victor are going to put, we're going to each put in, $5,000 and we're going to buy that freaking condo or that freaking brownstone or whatever it is. And we're going to start flipping it and we're going to start creating, like, it's really there's a point where we can no longer say the government, this person, this, because we have to now take matters into our, because they're not going to come to our rescue. No one's coming to cape for us at this point. We have to cape for ourselves. I agree,
but we do pay taxes, and I think, I agree with you totally. I'm totally into that. But I do think that we are tax-paying citizens. The money that we pay in taxes are funding these quote-unquote programs. And I've worked in government on program design for an agency, and I sat at those tables and I hear what is a metric of success. And I hear how, I see how they're able to like fudge numbers. And I'm not saying that these programs are not great, but like if you don't even have people at the table that are helping to kind of structure these programs, they're not going to be beneficial to the communities that you're trying to serve. And I do think that agencies, elected officials, like our dollars pay for these programs, for the, for the salaries of these people, they need to be held accountable. And I think that, you got some legislators who are doing some cool things on like home ownership. You got Senator Zelnor Myrie, who I saw has some progressive ideas. It's a senator in Brooklyn. Crown Heights is some part of his district where he's putting forth like legislation that's like, because there are Black homeowners like that are in Brooklyn that are being harassed, and they are being kind of bamboozled out of, they're being bamboozled out of their properties because of like technicalities,
they can't keep up. Right, exactly.
It's crazy to me. So it's like, don't tell me you're about equity, inclusion, and diversity, but you're not helping people. But I do agree that we can't, I'm not a socialist, and I will say that I can say that I do not believe in socialism in the way that it is being posited now. I think we need to stop being dependent, not we, but like I think these social programs that are created that are not informed by like Black people don't have seats at the table to help structure them and talk about the allocation of funds. One is a problem. And two, like, I think we need to your point, it needs to be internal. Like we need to come together as Black people and do these things. But I will say, if you look at Black Wall Street, again, we had an example of that. We've had examples, and that was the first act, one of the first acts of domestic terrorism in America, and we don't talk about it. And that was
not in the history books. It's not in the.
It's not
honestly,
in the
I didn't even hear about it until I think out of actually, you know, when I heard about it, when someone was pitching an idea for a film and to get my client in the movie, and they told me about it, and I was like, what?
Well, people said because of Watchmen that now, like, it's like really that's the reason. And the funny thing with that, with that is, it was started by a Karen kind of thing. Like, so historically, they say that these riots were propelled because a white woman accused these black men of raping her. There's no historical proof of this. You can't find anything.
But
on
that's all
this.
they needed.
That's all they needed. They bombed this area. I was there recently. They bombed it and completely demolished it. Black people came together and rebuilt. They did. It wasn't like, oh, they rebuilt and then they did it again. So, you know, we have examples.
No, we do, but we also do know that this country is not. I mean, we only make up what 12%, 15% at the most. Like, it's not. It's the numbers aren't in our favor. We've got to do for ourselves at this point. These agencies, as much as I agree with you, we are, our tax dollars are funding these agencies, and they should be, held accountable. But unfortunately, until we start doing for ourselves, we'll just be complaining about the issue. That's really what it is. Like,
one thing corporations can do, stop using prison labor. Like, I saw a list of all, like, we talk about corporations. I don't care if you are plastering Black Lives Matter all over your website, if you are using prison labor to produce products. Like, and these are things that I think, we are at a crucial point where it's like, we can really make demands of, like, we spend our money. Like, a part of it too, to Nora's point, is we patron a lot of these businesses. It's not like they're doing this because they really genuinely necessarily feel badly about, like you said, this has been going on forever. But they know that there could be an economic impact, right? If a lot of Black people stop purchasing, let's say Nikes, like, from Nike.
That's everything.
Target, I know, I go to Target all the time.
Walmart, oh my God, I cannot go.
Oh gosh, Walmart. But I mean, we need to make demands of these corporations.
Can we hear it? Were we losing Norah? Sorry, she can't hear us.
Oh.
No, you can't hear us?
Oh,
okay,
no.
Come back in. She'll probably have to come back in.
Yeah.
So, I agree with you. I mean, we'll probably have to pause this. I just want to make sure I know what time. It's 1:26. Okay. Let's see. She said she's coming back in. Good points. Good points.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Can I hear you guys now?
Hello. I hear you. We hear you. We hear you.
Nothing.
Oh, no?
I don't know what's going on.
Oh, we're having such a good convo.
I know.
Oh, I have one more topic. Well, no, that was Defunding was the last topic. Oh, good. Well, that was pretty much the show. Let me see if I can get her back on one more time. She can't hear us. She might have to join. This happens on Zoom all the time. My friend has the same thing.
Really? Where they just lose audio? It
just stops. So, like, it was happening to me. I had to reset my computer, my iPad.
Oh no, I think that happened. I was hosting an event and the speaker, he had to reboot his whole system.
Yeah. All these virtual conversations. I mean, we should just do this forever. Like, what in the world? Why are we just?
I know, this is so good.
But think about all the jobs that are going to be lost because of everybody's like, oh, well, we can work a little bit lighter. Like, we don't need to have such a heavy staff. Why don't we just, it's just going to be very sad.
I've already seen it. Like I've seen organizations and companies that are like, we're going to be remote indefinitely.
Yes, hey guys.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Well, that was our last topic, but honestly, I mean, I feel like we had just a lot of great points, and there's so much more that I feel like we can talk about that we probably haven't even begun the conversation. And I appreciate the fact that, like, we're having these conversations, I just hope that, we can make these, you guys are already doing it. You're in the community, you're working, you're helping in your local communities. But the people who are listening, I hope that it's not just a conversation. It's not just the social media post. You know, even if you can't go to a march because you're too young to be you're too old to be getting thrown in jail. You don't want to be going and, you know.
You don't want COVID.
I was going to say COVID.
You don't
COVID.
That's facts. That's one of the main reasons why I haven't went to a lot of the, I've been away from them. I watch it, I'll video it, but I'm not going to go. And plus, I used to do it all the time. Like my 20s, that I did it.
Girl,
you know?
I did it and felt like someone's grandmother, so I understand.
Yeah, you see all these kids running like
y'all got it. Y'all got it, right?
But I'm gonna pay the bills. I'll pay the bail funds. I'll put money towards the bail funds, and I'll donate because I believe in what they're doing. And I think what they're doing, just to go back on the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the things that I think that's so important about Black Lives Matter, if anything, is the fact that they've got a new generation of people to wake up.
Yep.
We haven't had this amount of like activism from like white girls that are crying, talking to their parents and not understanding why their parents are racist, not just realizing that they realize their parents are racist. You know what I mean? And them knowing that their parents on the wrong side of history. And it's like, you see them, they're emotionally, triggered by it. And I think that's important. I think that's really important. I think we've got a ways to go, but we've got to, keep the movement going. I mean, what are your lasting, your last comments on everything? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I really think, like to your point, there's a new generation that's bubbling that has taken the reins. I think they've done an excellent job in organizing and mobilizing. I see these protests across the country, and I am impressed. But I've only participated in one, and I was one that I literally co-organized. And I was like, yeah, y'all got this. Y'all are doing great. I really would love there to be pushes on people to especially because this next generation is like a huge voting block, and they're going to, and I want them to leverage that power to get Trump out of office. And I will say that, I think we need to really do some massive TV efforts. I think we need to get people to go out and vote. And, and that's one thing, get registered and go out to vote. That is one thing that people can really do to propel change right now. And do contested strategic research on candidates, and try to really be more involved in local government as well.
Well, you brought up voting, and okay, a lot of activists are saying, don't tell me to vote. Voting doesn't always help. And
I think that's a point of privilege. I don't agree with that.
Is it? No, it's not privilege. It's actually point of, we've done it and it's not working for them. Their candidate's not there. When you think about it, we've got two 75-year-old men going at it against each other. And there's 315 million people in America. And we have two 75-year-old white men that are literally, I can't tell them apart at some points because
girl.
Trump used to be a Democrat. Now he's a Republican.
Right.
Biden used to be a Republican when he was younger. Then he's a Democrat. His laws, the laws that he pushed in the '94 crime bill was detrimental. I mean, so tell me. I mean, look, I'm a Democrat.
Here's what I say to that.
But what do we say to these people they don't understand politics the way we do?
I say, I hear you. And I say that we need to continue to move the needle, but we're not going to be able to move that needle at all if Trump stays in office.
Yep.
So, and I know that people will push back and say Trump has done more for Black communities, et cetera. Yeah, I'm sure when you're hosting a rally on Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth, that is the biggest dog whistle I've ever seen to your base. So I don't, if he wants to keep his base happy, I don't see him riding for the rights that Black people want. I'm not the Progressive Party, not the left, that Black people want and need in order to achieve. So I think,
well, you guys see, I'm gonna have to play the conservative.
You gotta get your Chris on.
Yeah, if you're gonna say that, then I just want us to, let's keep our eyes open too. Trump has done. He's done a lot of. I mean, his crime, the bill, the reform, the First Step Act has
released 7,000 inmates.
You know what I mean? And that's a
more than Obama did, and that was great. But that's not all of the issue.
His
Do you know what I mean?
opportunity zones. No, I get it. I mean, obviously, these are just like shiny objects for him to get reelected. We get that.
We're going to bring up opportunity zones that also funded that huge high class mall at Hudson Yards.
Which is an opportunity zone.
Which is an opportunity zone.
Whatever.
So I'm like, you can keep giving me all of this, and I hear it all. And I'm not a fan of Biden. Biden's
and then HBCUs has been begging. They have to come and beg for money every year, and he finally gave them a forever pass to get federal funding, like all colleges get.
And that's great. But to me, that's very similar to getting rid of the master and master bedroom. Like, we're not actually tackling the real issues on why HBCUs can't get fundraising the same way these other private universities can, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think all of this is great. It's a Band-Aid approach, though. And I don't think Biden is going to be able to be our godsend. Biden's biggest competition in my mind is for people who aren't going to go out and vote. It's not Trump. Mm-hmm. What he needs to win over are the people that are totally apathetic and over it, right, to this conversation. And he is just shooting himself in the foot every freaking day, it seems like. Just please shut up and let us get to the polls in November, Biden. But I think who he makes his VP is going to say a lot. And I think hopefully how we change the House and the Senate is going to have way more effects than who our president is.
I could take Trump if I have my Senate. That's all I honestly,
we could flip the Senate.
I just need the Senate. I
think that needs to be the focus. Is flipping the Senate and keeping the House.
And keeping the House. But obviously, I'm going to be voting for Biden, so that's for sure. Yes. And I implore Black people also to think about it this way. Biden's going to be fine, whether he loses or wins or loses. Like, he's fine. He has his money. He's good. It doesn't matter if he wins or loses. And the celebrities that talk about, Diddy's been a very vocal person against, Biden, and Charlemagne, the God, has been a vocal person. And I implore Black people to really think about it this way. These people will all be fine if Trump is reelected. They'll all be fine. Will we be fine? 125,000 people died during this COVID crisis. Some of this could have been avoided had this man woke up a month earlier and did more than just China ban. I did the China ban. There's way more stuff he could have done, way more, research, way more things that he should have done. And he didn't, and he also did what he's known to do, bankrupt stuff. This is the seventh thing. He's known to bankrupt things. I feel like, I don't know why Democrats aren't saying this. Like, they should be saying, he's bankrupt six companies. I think he's bankrupting now his seventh. America.
I think Diddy and others, and what Black people, and myself included, have to really think about is our relationship with the Democrats and the Democratic Party. I'm really, I've been saying I need a third party. This just isn't enough for me. Mm-hmm, and I'm starting to feel that more and more. But I think the conversation is that, what are we holding Biden's feet to the fire on? What are we going to get out of electing him? What is he going to be held accountable on? And not just get him elected because he's not Trump. And I think that is where they're not doing it correctly, but that's where they want to push the conversation.
Like Hillary, like what they did with Hillary, the same kind of strategy with Hillary. You can't vote for Trump. He's a reality star. Well, guess what they did? You know what I mean? They didn't care. They just couldn't vote for you. So that might be another. And now with all his gaps, like, will people also might want to feel like
his campaign needs momentum. He needs, you want people to go into that room excited, because also then they'll vote down the line. So we may win back the Senate, right? Like, you want people to have the momentum. We need to get back some of the middle folks that then went right because it was just too much for them with Hillary in their minds, right? So it's like, okay, we need some momentum in his campaign. Right now, I don't see it. I'm hoping that who he selects for his VP will give him that push that we need going into November.
He's up in the polls, though. I mean, he has like a decent double-digit lead. I mean, you can't go.
Do you believe the polls?
Yeah, he's up.
Not after Hillary.
He's up in the polls in battle and in key kind of battleground states right now. But will he be able to keep that? I think Trump is doing just such a poor job like, I feel like Trump is kind of giving this away. Like, he has completely messed up with COVID. I mean, now you're looking at these states that reopened so early, that are seeing spikes.
But that's not him. That wasn't him. That's the governors. He's gonna flip this.
It wasn't, but he is the leader. I mean, at the end of the day, again, to your point, people are not informed. Like, I think we have to understand the level of people's like relationship with like civic, like government, and like they understand. Like, I think a lot of people get their news now from Twitter, Facebook. Like, and whatever's going viral, people don't even read articles. Like, people don't vet sources.
They just retweet them.
They retweet them. So it's like Trump is able, I mean, whatever you want to say about him, he has been able to market himself in a way that has gotten people excited and thinking that he's a viable candidate. I remember during this time in the last election cycle, people were like, Trump, no way. There's no way. And look what we have, and the odds are really against us. Like, it is statistically, most people get reelected. Like, you get second term. So it's like the Democratic Party, to your point, Nora, they need to come correct. So I think Biden's VP choice is going to really, make a huge difference.
What do you want? What do you want to see there?
You know who my girl is.
Who's your girl?
Warren?
Still? You know it. I don't care. That's my boo. I don't care because she is left and crazy enough that we can at least get to the middle. Like, I need someone who's going to push him in a real progressive way and not just give more of the status quo. Kamala, to me, is going to give status quo. Happy to be the first black.
I think she might be. I think they're saying it's her. A lot of people. I know. I've been talking to some inside people that work with that. It seems like it's leaning towards, which would be such a devastation.
I get so nervous because I'm like,
she's so capable.
Yeah.
She's capable.
She's capable, but she's the same. But the problem is her record was so like, for black people, it just makes
she's not gonna move the needle for us.
She's not.
She's scared in that way.
I think Warren is a good choice.
Same reasons, the whole reason why we talked about the microaggressions and the Karens. Please believe that happened to her in her career too. Yeah. So I hate to say Elizabeth over her, but she has more freedom than Kamala will have, if that makes sense.
I think that's a fair point. I think we need someone that's going to push it so far to the left, like, push him so that he can move in some way, shape, or form. Like, student loans need to be forgiven.
Yes,
and I think she is. You want to talk about economic empowerment?
Okay, that's a reparation, honey.
So reparation. Why? That is something that is literally doable. They can literally do that. She has created blueprints and models. That's one of her policy platforms for quite some time. So I think there are things that can be had, and already Biden is talking about it. I was
legalize marijuana.
Legalize marijuana. I mean,
he's not saying that though. He's not saying.
But she is.
Wait. Biden did say he did talk about. He put it out that he would forgive undergrad debt for
when I heard he wants he want a repayment, like fixing the repayment program.
No, they're talking about forgiveness, but only for undergrad debt. I think they just need to.
Perfect.
They need to. No, I think everything. They need to just clear student loan debt because
is that fair though? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair, especially for Black folks. We helped build some of these institutions. Columbia University was built off. I went to built off of slave labor. Like, let's stop and like really. No, you want to talk about economic revitalization? Give people cannot buy homes when they're straddled with this crazy amount of like student loan debt. I mean, and you're gonna have it has adverse impacts on society, like on economically on our culture anyway. People like our generation can't afford to buy homes. Like, it's not really good for the economy.
And that's why we need a very left-leaning VP that can help to be in his ear and push this. And he's old, y'all. I mean, he might not make his whole term. We don't know.
Why do you say that? So
no, it's true.
Trump is 74.
Biden had what? 2 brain aneurysms?
He's 3 years younger.
He's
Biden had aneurysms.
Huh? He had 2 brain aneurysms. I'm not even trying to be funny. Like,
oh, he did?
Yeah.
Yes,
when people talk about the gas, I think like, I try not to laugh at that because I'm like, he has incurred like brain trauma, but like, and then not to mention like his family, like, had so many deaths in the family, like, he's been through some stuff, but
he's been through some stuff. But you know who I like, guys? You guys, I don't know if you guys, are you familiar with Congresswoman Val Demings?
Yeah.
I love
I don't know enough about her. I need
energy.
to look up more about her.
Warmth. I feel like we need that.
I would love a black woman as the VP. I would love
I want
absolutely.
warmth with her. Like, I don't.
What is she about?
Yeah.
Huh?
What is she about?
She's in police. She's a police. She was a police officer for 27 years. But she's out here fighting for us. But honestly, you're gonna need. This is America. They're not gonna like. There's certain things that are just never gonna change in terms of like they want they want to have some kind of. They want to feel safe. So someone like her, because I also feel like we can't be too far off. You know what I mean with the candidate, because we still have to let like white people sat it out. That's why we lost. 97% of us voted, and white people sat out. So you can't totally say. All black, like you have, it's America. We're 12%.
What about Susan Rice? I heard her name floated around.
I don't know. They deaded that.
And she had problems with Benghazi. That would be a way.
Yeah,
they're gonna bring that up over. We're just gonna keep hearing that over and over. The only person I thought about, this is someone that's not even in politics, is Melody Hobson. Are you guys?
Oh yes. I love her.
She's brilliant. Brilliant woman. And she was a, I guess, hedge fund person. I think she was like. She was married to George Lucas. She's very she's very
she's amazing.
She's so like inspiring to me as a black woman. I'm like, wow, I'm in awe of her. And what I appreciate about her is that she's also helped a lot of black businesses, like invested in black business, found ways to get empower black business owners. So
I just hate the respectability. Like I hate that respectability stuff. You know what I mean? Why? Like, because it just feels to me more of the same, more of getting legitimacy.
She's not.
But even saying like
someone that's gonna help. We literally spent 4 months with not making any money for the country. Whoever gets there, it can't just be a politician. It has to. We need like we have Biden already.
But that's true. Warren is good because. Warren and her specialty is like economic. Like she has created policy platforms even during her campaign. Like I was reading some of them. They're very innovative. Like she's studied like the banking system. She's done a lot of reforms, I think, that are beneficial. And she's able to work across the aisle. As left as we say Elizabeth Warren is, like she's strategic.
I wouldn't be mad if it's her.
I just remember Kathy Black taking over DOE, and she was this crazy, successful business person. But when it comes to government, there is a certain skill set that you actually, well, now we have both, where there you really need a certain skill set. Like you can't just apply what you learn. And maybe I'm thinking too narrow-minded when it comes to government because I've worked in government, but I don't know. I don't know. I need somebody that has like real plans and policies that they've seen implemented, been effective and willing to implement now.
I'm excited about it being a woman VP. I mean, that's to me,
true.
I am very excited because the reality is I do not think Biden, he'll be a one-term president. I really do see that, and I think a lot of people have been saying that, and this is an opportunity for a woman to be I don't understand like why we're here. Like, I think women are better leaders. And I will say that. Look at all these.
It's proven.
You ain't gotta whisper that, girl.
No. But like, look at all these black women mayors. Like the mayor, I don't know her name, of San Francisco. I mean, Oakland, she's phenomenal. I'm like, of Atlanta. These women are really
Lance Bottoms.
Keisha,
your mayor in DC. She's good too.
Oh, Bowser.
But she's also. I hate to say, she's kind of.
Yeah, I didn't say her name because I'm gonna leave
my DC folks got some, it's prickly.
Yeah, I was like, oh girl, she wants more money for the police. Like we're talking about defunding. She's like,
well,
more
money.
They help lead in the gentrification of DC, but yes.
But we need a woman in office. I mean, enough is enough. Like we do, and I think the election was stolen from Hillary. I will say, I think. It was. And I think I'm more excited about Biden just as a VP pick. I really am.
Me too.
When I heard it was Klobuchar, I was like, oh no.
I almost cried. I literally almost cried because I was just like, we're going to lose again. Here we go.
Yep.
We just lost.
Yeah.
And Klobuchar, and what's so great, Klobuchar, George, I feel bad for, we lost him, but it happened in that state, in her state. And she had the chance, apparently she had the chance to get rid of this cop at the time, because this isn't his first rodeo. This cop has been, you know, he's Derek Chauvin has done a lot of crappy things, and she had the chance to get rid of him and didn't. And she has she's also another person that, like, it's time to get rid of all these people, though, really. All these politicians. It's time to, like, scrap them off. I think that you know, I feel like the AOCs kind of get muted because there aren't enough of them in like she was, you know, so she came and she was so vocal. Now she's kind of quiet, you know, she's not as vocal as she once was, you know, where she was on every talking, and it's because they kind of dim you and say, listen, it's almost like the corporate America world. It's like, you can be Black and proud, but when you get into the corporate world, it's like, you can't wear that top. You got to put your hair back. Please don't wear, you know, braids or dreads. Like, it mutes you. And that's basically how it is. It's to simulate, you know?
It's also called getting reelected. So
that's
I mean, that's the number. I mean, you know, and this is why I'm like, I just want us to be more realistic about all of these things, because you can have someone go in there like this and then 6 years later, you know, come out looking very different, because it's a real
Obama, that's Obama's story. Unfortunately, that's his legacy. He was progressive. To me, when people talk bad about Obama, I say, you don't understand what it is to be the first Black man president, excuse me. You know, he's the George Washington of presidents, and you think he could have just changed everything that one man can change?
He also didn't have Congress, so
exactly. People are just
first 2 years he did, but yes, he didn't have for the last 6 years of his tenure, he didn't. But there is stuff he could have done. I do feel like there were certain points that he could have been a lot more forceful, especially with the police brutality stuff. Eric Holder kind of disappointed me too. Like, he went to Ferguson and they came back, well, like this.
And the Freddie Gray situation. I will never forget the split screen of him and Freddie Gray.
Yeah. And then he said some stuff that it's just, you know what it is though? It's, again, we get co-opted by, you know,
if we don't think as Black professional people, especially those who've been exposed at PWIs, if you don't think that you've internalized any of this white supremacist, you know, behavior, mentality, thinking any of that, you a fool. Because we've definitely internalized a lot of that, and most of it just to survive. You know what I mean? Just so that we can exist in these places. But
that's right.
No, girl.
All right. Well, I'm going to end it right here. Thank you so much, ladies, for the great conversation.
So good.
We got our Joe Rogan 2 hours on.
Yes. We're going to have more of these. Hopefully, we got to get back into this. There's a lot to talk about. We have to talk about, I definitely want to talk about, you know, we got to get more into our political conversation, specifically as it pertains to some of these legislations. I'd like to break those down. And then, as you know, as we get closer to the election, I definitely we're going to be going on overdrive with these podcasts, because I want to get people really focused on what we have to do. We have one job. That's it. One job. We got to get Trump out, you know, and unfortunately, it's not I know he's done these sprinkle things for Black people, and it seems like it's helping. It's not. He's not going to do anything. You think he did something now, the 4 years, now that he has no election, he's going to literally just continue to feed his pockets and his family's pockets. You know, and we're tired. We're tired of it. We don't want it. It's over, you know, so we're going to have to really get out in these streets and get, you know, like whatever we have to do to get this man and this woman elected. We have to do it. This is the most important election. So, all right, I'm Kerstyn. This is Politics Podcast, and you can find us on Politics Pod on Instagram. Please listen to us on Spotify. Hit subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, and Kerstyn J on Instagram.
I'm Norah Yaya. You can find me at MissYayaComedy.com or on Instagram at MISSYAHYA.
Nice. Jacquelyn Martell. You can find me on Instagram too, Dama, DAMA_Martell.
Yes. And thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's stop recording this. All right. Bye. Oh, wait. How do I do this? How do I end this?
I think you just leave.
No, I mean, because I was just like,